Good evening, one and all. Welcome along. It is season 4, episode 85. It's a nice intimate show. Lauren, it always seems to be that we're doing these little intimate shows. It's just me and you.
It does, and it feels weird to be doing it on a Friday as well this week. But I think this week's just been absolutely crazy. I think everything's going on. My wife and daughter are going away on holiday tomorrow, so at some point all hell's going to break loose as she tries to do packing tonight. But and that's after she's been to the pub because she's been out marching today as well. So,
Oh, lovely.
yep.
It's a busy time, and look, I'm filling in tonight. Obviously Mike is away. He's on his brother Lloyd's stag do up in London. So I've seen a picture, and Mike looks decidedly green already.
I thought he looked quite dapper with the hotel dressing gown on as well.
Yeah.
You know?
I'm just wondering now if he's actually already fallen on the bed or not,
Oh,
fallen
quite,
asleep.
yeah, quite possibly.
And Paul is also touring the lovely scenery up around Scotland.
Yeah,
So,
he's literally every day I've looked at WhatsApp or Instagram. He's basically, he's posted somewhere where I've been literally 10 minutes before or something like that. So he must have Find My Friends or something like that on his phone and tracking me down. But
that's it. But we're in off season, and like that, it's quiet. There's not a lot happening. The two pieces of news that I've picked up today that I was gonna bring up, during this week, we'll try and swap that around now, Labarski, for you if we can. There we go. But obviously, look, the off-season schedule and the trip to Oxnard has come out. Like, everything is kicking off in Oxnard on the 26th of July, I believe, is the first practice session, and then the 27th is the first open session. Labarski's happy now that you're on the right hand side. So like it's going to be a busy period, obviously, in Oxnard. I think they're there from the 26th through to the 15th of August.
Yeah, I think they actually report the 24th, but obviously there's the first couple of days that they're not open. I think the first open practice is the 26th, and that's going to be around about the same time as the opening press conference with Jerry and Stephen, State of the Union, that sort of thing. And as who is it? Joe's saying that touchwood, it's good that there's not been a lot of news coming out. There's a lot of news coming out around the league of suspensions for some people, legal incidents for wide receivers in Miami, that sort of thing. So touchwood, it's good that we're not hearing anything about anybody with a star on the helmet. So
or those that are creating headlines are not very newsworthy.
Yeah,
we know someone has a target on their back with our very own Graham. So Graham has been lighting up our group chat with some Instagram posts from a certain Dallas Cowboys player.
Yes.
But
again, as long as that's all that he's posting, that's not anything different or completely different to what he was posting last year or where he was having to post bail. But
this is true. Joe must be reading my mind again, because he's just pulled up the good news this year. Kellen Moore won't be reporting for this year's training camp. And that was the next point I was going to raise is Kellen Moore was on with, I think it was with Peter Schrager either yesterday or earlier today. And he spoke about how Dak is the most impressive leader he's ever worked with. And that, he said, includes coaches, and players that Kellen has played or worked under. So very high praise from Kellen, obviously. Maybe there's a little bit of motivation in saying such a thing.
Yeah, but I mean, you're hearing that across the board that, even some of these guys that aren't on the Cowboys that are coming to the Dak yard and training with Dak, they're all basically coming out and saying that, Dak is a leader, and say what you want about the rest of the team, and unfortunately his record in the playoffs and all that, but everybody to a man is saying that this guy is the legit leader of the Cowboys.
Yeah.
Would be the leader of any squad that he was on. And obviously, I mean, part of his degree was actually leadership as well. So he took a number of courses on leadership. He's obviously putting it into practice, and he has the guys' respect, not just on his team, but other guys that he's training with. So, the guys, we've had guys before who, put up gaudy numbers. Danny White, for example, put up gaudy numbers, but due to actions that happened during the strike seasons, he fell out of favor, and it took a lot for the team to rebound and come together under him. So as long as Dak's there and Dak's got the guys on side, it's just a case of with anything, it's just a case of getting lucky. You need to have the ability, you need to have the camaraderie and the one-upmanship, but you still need to have a bit of luck as well, and we just haven't been lucky to that extent.
Yeah, and I mean, you've kind of touched on it there, say in terms of playoffs. Like, I think every playoff loss the Cowboys have had has been by less than a field goal, if I'm right in saying that.
Yeah, it's certainly been they've all been less than 7 points. I mean,
it's definitely less than 7, yeah.
And I think the one that really sticks in my mind is the year that, obviously, I think it's Dak's rookie year, and obviously Green Bay went up 21 points, and Dak brought them back. And again, it was literally, we gave them too much time at the end, and Aaron Rodgers, being Aaron Rodgers, he went down the field, and a little bit of help with non-holding calls on our defensive line, and sliding catches that didn't get reviewed or whatever.
Yeah, and tackles from goats being called back.
Yep. Yeah, you had to get that one in. Yep,
I did. But listen, look, we're going to talk defensive tackles tonight. And Mike, in setting up the post, setting up the show this morning, must have been already on beer, because he'd set everything up as a defensive end, and we were the two of us were like, "What are we?" So, but one of the questions I want to ask, kind of before we actually get into the nuts and bolts of this, Lauren, obviously, look, we have essentially 6 players who play defensive tackle. We've a couple of guys that can drop in and will play defensive tackle in a pinch or in rotation. Like, obviously Tank can drop in and play defensive tackle. Chauncey Goldston has been a tweener. Junior Fahoko, the talk, he's going to be that kind of a tweener hybrid player. Does the depth at defensive tackle concern you at all?
It doesn't concern me as such. I think this is certainly going to be when the front office and the coaches all sit down and they make their cuts. And of course, this year there is only one cut down day. It's right at the end, so there is no phased cut downs from 90 to 85, 85 to 80, and what have you. So this is literally, I mean, there are guys on this roster that you are going to have to make hard decisions on, and particularly the next 2 positions that we're talking about, defensive tackle and defensive end. There are guys that are going to be, admittedly, we could use them as trade pieces if need be, but this is where the strength of the team is our defensive line, and there are guys that are unfortunately going to be let go on the street, and they're going to end up getting picked up, and no doubt they'll get picked up by a cross division rival or something like that. Obviously the Cowboys thought last year that they were going to be smart and get rid of put John Ridgway on the practice squad, and the Commanders came calling, and John Ridgway ended up playing half the season last year. So and looks to be in a good position to start this year with the Commanders defensive line as well. So
he does. And like, I suppose if we're to really start off with this bunch of defensive tackles, obviously, sorry, just seeing Lebarski's comment there. Yeah, you're right. Yep. Lebarski is backing up your comment there, Lauren. He's saying whoever we cut will make an impact on another team, and like, that's understandable, and it is a thing with this front office. They have built strength on strength, in terms of taking defensive linemen and trying to build it up. But obviously, look, our first round pick this year was a defensive tackle. It's the first time we've drafted a defensive tackle in the first round since Russell, Maryland in 91, I'm going to say, Lauren. I know you're...
I think you're right, yeah. I think it is 91, yep.
Yeah. I knew you'd know exactly when it was. We haven't taken a defensive tackle in the first round since that time. And obviously, look, a lot of people will tell you defensive tackles, you can get them all the way down the board. You get 5th round, 6th round guys that'll come in and do a job. But this team seemed to be very high on Mazi Smith out of Michigan, who was our first round draft pick this year. 6'3", 337 pounds. He's just turned 22. I wasn't initially impressed with the pick, but like everything, I never am initially impressed. And you go back and watch some tape and you watch some highlights, and again, this pick made a lot of sense.
It did. I mean, I think if you were to go back and play the night one draft show that we did, we were all pretty much, it'd be a pen throw as Dave Hellman classes it, that we'd be going, why did we make that? And then, literally, I think by the next night, when we came on to do night 2, we were like, actually, you know what? I've watched this, I've watched that, The guy's moving 800 kilos around, or 800 pounds, whatever it is.
Yeah.
He's got strength for a guy that's only 22.
Yeah.
Isn't fully grown yet.
Yeah.
And they were having to get weight machines in to cope with the amount of strength that he had.
Yeah.
And he's already competing against the sort of things that Larry Allen used to do. I mean, that's quite something. And they brought him on slowly in the OTAs, but I mean, come training camp, I think take the leash off and let him run. And I fully expect him to be ready to go with the ones from the start. I can see some of the things that they're talking about that, again, Michigan purely used him last year as that run stuffing nose tackle technique, whatever you want to call it. But there are plays where he has quite a motor on him, and if if he's there as pass rushing, needs to refine the technique by all means. But potentially you could have Hankins and him lined up alongside each other, and obviously the strength is there or is going to create problems for the offensive line. Going, well, wait a minute, who do we double? And then you have Hankins take on the double team for the run stuffing, and Mazi Smith will have enough pass rush to flush whoever they're facing out of the pocket and into Micah's hands, or and it's only going to help this whole defense, I think. he is no slouch, and you know, I can see the star qualities that made him the first round pick for us.
Yeah, like obviously, look, there's no point really talking about statistics for defensive tackles because it's you have to actually watch the tape and watch what the player is doing. And as you say, are they attracting that double block? Are they getting into the backfield, putting pressure on? Because defensive tackles generally don't tend to make a lot of tackles. Like I'm looking at his numbers here, he had 46 last year. 22 solo, 24 assists, he had 1 sack. So you're looking at that and going, that's not great. But it's where, as you say, it's their ability to push the pocket back, push the offensive line into the quarterback, and if they can, disrupt, get into that backfield.
Yeah. I mean, again, it all goes down to what the defensive scheme is as well. And, you know, you go back to sort of the late 90s, Leon Lett was constantly in the backfield, but that was the style of defense, was beat your man and get to the backfield. But that had its own problems where it was creating lanes for running backs. So for every tackle for loss that you had, you probably gave up 2-3 10-yard runs against them. And I think those years we did have bad years running the ball as a run defense.
Yeah.
And you know, obviously we've seen the last couple of years as well. I mean, I think everybody for the last 4 or 5 years at least, tail end of Rod Marinelli, Mike Nolan, and obviously with Dan Quinn, we've all been asking for these big guys to clog up and just take on the double team and let the linebackers flow to the ball. And, you know, that will help guys like Leighton Van Der Esch, you know, Damone Clark and all that, where they're not having to take on these guys and put themselves in danger. So, you know, this is where the help is.
Yeah. And Lebarski is making a really good comment here. And like, folks, if you're watching in, you're tuned in, send in your comments. We will try and pull up all the comments and try and bring them in. You know, you guys are the big part of the show. Myself and Lorna are just having a conversation, really.
Yeah.
But let us know your thoughts. But Lebarski is saying if he develops the pass rush they say they see in him, then this pick is outstanding. But regardless, he does help this team from day one. And I think you kind of alluded to it there in your last comment. You were saying if he can effectively stop the run, you allow Leighton Van Der Esch to do his thing, you allow Damone Clark to do his thing, Mike can do his thing. And last season, when Jonathan Hankins went down injured, when Leighton Van Der Esch went down injured, your two best run-stuffing defensive players, this team was in trouble. And that seems to have been addressed now with this pick in terms of bringing Mazi Smith in.
Yeah, I completely agree. And, you know, it's not that we haven't put premium resources to them in recent years. You can say, we've drafted guys like Quinton Bohanna, who by far is the heaviest of the defensive tackles. He's weighing in at 360 pounds at the moment.
Yeah.
I'm sure, obviously, maybe the goal is to get a few pounds off that because you'll want some of the speed. But that's what he's listed at for the OTAs. But he just hasn't performed the way that, you know, they were obviously hoping to. And it is a big stress to put on somebody who was a 5th, 6th round pick. But, you know, it's now put up or shut up time for him as well.
So you kind of said it there, say maybe 5 minutes ago, in terms of, say, potentially having Hankins and Smith on the field at the same time. You know, obviously, look, they're both more that one tech, that run stuffing player. You know, and Dan Quinn's system is so flexible, and the way Aidan Durd is teaching that defensive line, that you can have the two guys in there and do their thing.
Yeah. I mean, for one thing, I mean, this variable front that we have with this defense, where half the time Micah's coming up and he's lining up in a 2-point stance, he's lining up in a 3-point stance, he's dropping back to linebacker. You've got Tank Lawrence as well. I mean, this is basically, it just will create so much confusion, because is Mazi Smith going to be a 5 technique defensive end? Is he going to be a defensive tackle? And then throw in some of the other guys that we've got on this roster as well. And, when you talk about going to a pass rushing scheme as well for third down, and you bring your NASCAR package on, and you've got, you unleash hell, because you actually, you don't necessarily need to bring all the defensive ends on. You can have these defensive tackles on that are tweeners, and this is just going to... Dan Quinn must be licking his chops. I mean, in some respects, it's a great thing to have, but it puts pressure on you to make the right call as well. So
I'm pretty much on record that outside of the Dallas Cowboys, the 1985 Chicago Bears are the one team that I loved seeing, and I love watching documentaries, and their whole thing around that 46 defense was constantly pressure, get to the quarterback, sack the quarterback, take the quarterback down, injure the quarterback, get another quarterback in. And that seems to be what Aidan Durday and Dan Quinn are building. It's guys who are just dogs of war. They want to go out. They want to, not that they want to hurt the quarterback, but they want to get their hands on the quarterback. They want to sack him, take him down.
Yeah. I mean, certainly there's, unlike Buddy Ryan, there's certainly not going to be any bounties going out on the opposition players. But
no,
certainly this defense is geared up to getting to the quarterback and making as much trouble in the backfield as possible. So.
Yeah. So the next guy on our list, and we kind of have spoken a little bit about him, obviously, look, Jonathan Hankins, who we traded for last year, we brought him in for a 6th rounder. Sorry, I'm just seeing Lebarski's comment here. He says, Mazzy's not the fridge, but he did say he's like a fridge rolling down a hill, so that's close enough.
That's a pretty good description for him as well.
Yeah. And I think on Fridge, I think even in his first season, I think 85 was his first season, Buddy Ryan didn't like using him. And Mike, oh God, what's his name? Ditka, yeah, sorry. Mike Ditka started using him on offense just to get him touches, get him in the game. So, happy days. But Jonathan Hankins, obviously we acquired him from the Raiders for a 6th round pick last year. He came in, he had an instant impact in terms of he solved that run stuffing issue for us. Himself and Leighton Van Der Esch worked very well in tandem together, and teams weren't hitting us for 150 yards or anything like that. I think in most of their games they kept teams under 100 yards rushing.
I think it was something like that. Certainly, I mean, by the time we actually traded for him, I think we'd given up a big day to Chicago Bears. I think their ground game had basically run up about 200 yards on us. And the Lions, I think the Lions the week before as well, albeit the Lion, we stopped them in goal line situations, but the Lions had run up over 150 yards on us. Hankins came in, made an immediate impact for 2-3 weeks, then went down injured till at least the playoffs. And then he was a big part of shutting down the game for the Buccaneers as well, so that you put the game into Tom Brady's hands, and we finally got the W against Tom Brady. So and then Tom Brady went up and quit. Took up part ownership in various
Raiders
sporting activities. Raiders, and I think he's taken on a couple of other teams as well. So
and I think he's involved in crypto as well and stuff like that.
Yeah.
He's not short of interests anyway. He was never going to be short of things to do once football ended for him. But
no.
Definitely Hankins can have a claim to say I made Tom Brady retire.
Definitely.
Yeah. Labarski is just after putting in another couple of comments. He said, Brian said it here, play Mazzy on offense. No problem. If that's what it takes. Quinton Bohanna, you can use him on jumbo packages as well. But Labarski's he's just come back in and he said from play one, you could see Hankins' impact. It's probably what made front office open to taking Mazzy in the first round. And I think that does have a good kind of point in terms of where they went, because obviously, look, we all had our opinions about who the first round pick was going to be. We were all leaning towards, say, an Osiris Torrance or a left guard or something, or someone like that. And when the discussion was being had in the war room, and anyone who's seen the clips, they will have seen that Will McClay was saying, we have not had a defensive tackle this high on our board, more or less than the time Will had been there. Yeah. And, Hankins did seem to have an impact on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, things might have been different if CD Lamb hadn't dropped to us a few years ago. We might have put money on it. Who was it? Was it Caleb Von Chasen that was...
Yeah, Caleb Von Chasen was
the next pick or whatever. I think we were all thinking that was going to be who it was. But, outside of that, I mean, we've never gone into this draft saying, no, we're going to take a defensive tackle with the first round. It's the same that, you don't say, oh, we're going to draft a safety this year or whatever. That was just never in the Dallas playbook for the draft, But it's good to see that we are putting some resources into it this year, and of course Hankins as well. I mean, Hankins is 9-10 years in the league as well.
I think this is his 11th season.
11th, right? Okay, so yeah, again, he's coming towards the end of his career, so you've got get him to guide Mazzy Smith, get him to develop. To be the next superstar, and then you can say thank you, Hankins, and send them off into retirement. So,
I mean, like our biggest rival over in that city, which I dare not mention. Like, I mean, in the last 2 years, they've taken defensive tackles. Like, obviously, they've taken Jordan Davis this year. They took someone last year. Jalen Carter,
Jordan Davis last year, Jalen Carter this year. So
that's it. But they've kept Fletcher Cox, they've kept Brandon Graham around. So a bit of experience always helps, because the transition from college for a defensive tackle is a lot harder to make. It's very rare that you get an Aaron Donald, and I suppose Aaron Donald really is a unicorn, in that he came in and just was immediately impactful.
Yeah, completely agree. I mean, obviously, Kalijah Kancey this year, a lot of people were comparing his combine stats, but to think that Kalijah Kancey has a chance of coming in and being, the next Aaron Donald, I think is way off. And normally it's part of it is because the strength and conditioning programs in college aren't there for these guys. They don't have the abilities. But again, going back to Mazzy Smith is already at the strength that he, is competing against the likes of Larry Allen's strength feats and what have you. So, it's certainly looking good for us that we should be able to get good production out of him this year. So
So the last of our three, say, run stuffers, our one techs, obviously, and you've alluded to him already, is Quinton Bohanna. As you say, out of Kentucky. We're moving into our third season with Quinton on the team. A lot of people had high hopes for Quinton, and it just doesn't seem to have worked so far. Now, obviously, we've said in the last 30 seconds, it takes time, and maybe this is the time it will take. This is the year he'll break through in terms of production, in terms of getting on the field.
But he really needs to open training camp this year, all guns blazing, and again we go back to luck. He needs to play through whatever injuries he picks up in training camp. He needs to show that he's dependable, because if not, he'll be one of the guys that's getting his release papers at the end of camp, I think. So I think Hankins and obviously Mazzy Smith, with the entirety of his contract's actually going to be guaranteed. There's no way a repartnering company with either of those two. So Bohanna's really going to have to stake a claim that we need to go long at defensive tackle. Otherwise, he's on the first bus out of here, I think. Yeah,
and for you, is there a reason that Bohanna hasn't clicked so far? Is it, you mentioned already he's 360 pounds right now. You don't hear of an awful lot of 360 pound nose tackles anymore. Most of them are, say, around that 320 to 340 mark.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. You look at him and there's some plays that he makes, and you're going, oh yeah, he's switched on and what have you. The next 4 or 5 plays, he's getting pushed off the ball, and you're like, is this the same guy? So it's just the consistency there, and the consistency isn't there. Now, does that mean he isn't concentrating off the field when they're doing the film study sessions and he's not looking out for things? Is there something that opposition have picked up on, and they're actually taking advantage of his weaknesses or whatever? I don't know, but there's just something there that it's a flash. He's flashing, but he's just not consistent with it. And again, the big thing when we talk about Hankins going down injured, and you thought, well, maybe even with the sort of coaching that he was maybe doing with Bohanna, it just wasn't materializing in the same way. So again, the rushing numbers went up, and it was a big concern, and that's why we've put the money into it and the draft capital into it. So,
I think a lot of what I saw with Bohanna last year was he seemed to have a high pad level, and it was allowing the center and guard to get in and under and forklift him out of the way. Because for a guy, as I say, at even if he was at 350 last year, you shouldn't be giving up that kind of, effort. You should be able to soak the block, and he didn't seem to be able to do that.
Yeah, and I mean this almost takes you back. If only Paul was on tonight, we could mention a name from a couple of years ago as well that was constantly having a high pad level and getting shoved off the ball as well.
Yeah,
so, it's almost like he's following in those same footsteps, and saying, well, my bulk should be enough to stop anybody, no matter how high I am or whatever my position is. So and it's little things like that. If he can just keep himself low and make it. It's hard to say, but if for a 360 pound guy, if you make it hard for somebody to get their hands on you, you make it hard for them to push you back. I was always taught when I was playing one technique that you got up there, you get in, take on the double team, and then do whatever you can to actually don't let them get easy access to the front of your shirt.
Your chest plates, yeah.
Yeah, constantly twist, turn, smack them around, whatever. And that allows you to hold these guys, but also if the runners come in at you, you can break through and make the stop. And we're just, as I say, we're not seeing that with Quinton Bohanna. So
yeah. So Lebarski knows exactly where you're going there, and he's given Paul a bit of love there, and he's given Dontari Poe an even bigger bit of love. But Lebarski's also said here, he said, barring injury, I don't think there's any way Big Bo makes the team this year. You've alluded to it. That was kind of where I was going when I kind of said to you about, is there a concern about the depth on the team in terms of, say, pure defensive tackles?
Well, I mean, again, as we're saying that, obviously you're going to have Mazi Smith as a potential one technique. You're going to have Hankins as well. There's a guy that probably, even though he's making the transition from offensive line to defensive line, he's another guy in that sort of mold who, as far as I'm concerned, you've probably, Dan Quinn's probably seen as much of him in practice that has made, there's obviously something Dan Quinn has seen when Isaac Alarcon has been playing scout team. There's obviously something he has seen that has him licking his chops, and went to Mike McCarthy and said, look, switch him to defensive line. And, I'm not saying that, Bohanna's suddenly going to be supplanted by Isaac Alarcon, but if it comes down to those two and you want somebody to sign to your practice squad, you're going to sign Isaac Alarcon, because again, if the injury bug hits, you got, again, position flex where you've got a guy who, where it's not defensive tackle, defensive end, it's offensive line, defensive line. You've got somebody that can be called up, and he's maybe not well schooled in both areas, but he would at least be able to do a job for you. So again, this is why I think Bohanna's probably on the outside looking in. And fingers crossed nothing happens to Hankins and nothing happens to Mazi Smith. That you see them out a long time, and it happens, but it happens to every team as well. So at some point during this season, everybody is going to go looking for something else. So again, this is, I think Bohanna is probably going to be on the trading block at the end of the season, maybe, or at end of training camp. See what we can get for him. If there's an area that we're really concerned about, you go and shop for it as well, so that you're not risking. We'll be fairly low down in the waiver wire at the moment, so we'll be 26th, 27th. So that's where we'll be looking to go.
Yeah, you like, obviously, look, the three guys we've talked about are your classic run stuffers, your one tech. Moving over to the three tech side of the ball, and we'll talk about Isaac Alarcon. You've mentioned the name already. Obviously, he's making the transition across from offensive line over to defensive line. Dan Quinn's obviously seen something. We still have, I think, have we still got a year of eligibility with Isaac?
No, he got an extra year last year purely on the fact that the first year was a COVID year. So this year, if he's on the 53, he counts towards our 53. If he's on the practice squad, he counts as one of the 16 players on the practice squad, and his money, whatever money he gets as well, counts towards the salary cap. And he's, it's not, he's not a protected player on the practice squad. So another team can come calling at any point in time. So, you really have to have if you are keeping them on, you really have to have a plan, and you have to have flexibility again, where he can play scout offensive line, scout defensive line, and be able to. But he also needs to prove that he can do a job to stay around and actually supplant somebody like Quentin Bohanna, so that make him expendable.
Yeah, I mean, like, obviously, look, there's very little tape or anything to suggest Isaac is going to be a starter or is going to make the 53. But I suppose if there's one thing that's shone through from 2 years ago, he's not afraid of hard work. He's not afraid to put in the yards. He will give you his all. He will give you every effort he can, and he will bust his ass. And I think that will count for a lot with this coaching team.
Yeah, he's going to do everything he can to get the cake. So
yeah. I'm just seeing a comment here from Joe. I'm going to pull it up. He says, I believe Sam Williams will be a Pro Bowl player this year. I can see where Joe was coming from with that comment. Would you tend to agree?
I can as well. I mean, obviously, we'll talk about him next week when we're talking defensive end. But I think, again, we alluded to earlier that, if you get a good pass rush from our interior defensive tackles as well, you're going to flush them out to the outside. And I mean, I think as well, there was questions about the maturity of Sam Williams last year, this whole car crash situation where initially you thought it was just a minor prank, and then he goes and gets arrest, or there was an arrest warrant out for dangerous driving, doing 98 and a 30, I think it was, or something like that. And you thought, oh my God, what have we got here? But there was a recent feature on the Blitz, the Cowboys off-season program, and they were talking about how he's changed things around this year. If you watch the Cowboys Experience program that Mike and Paul did a couple of weeks ago as well, where Sam Williams was on, you see that he's matured this year. He understands the game both on and off the field. And again, another year of coaching with Dan Quinn, I think he's going to be up there. And it's he looks like Micah Parsons. That's pretty scary bookends that we're going to have on this defensive line. So.
Yeah, and you wouldn't say Sam lit it up, but there were flashes of potential there from him last year. And like, as we say, the defensive line, especially defensive tackle, and I know he's a defensive end, it's a 3-year thing to prove that they have that ability. And, you give a young man like Sam Williams, you're going, right, you're now playing for the Dallas Cowboys, you're earning shed loads of money. You're earning shed loads of money. Sometimes it does go to your head a little bit, and it does take Dan Quinn, Aidan Durdy, Mike McCarthy pulling you in, sitting you down and saying, this is your job. This is what you're doing for a living. You can't pee about with this. If you want to pee about, we'll have no problem cutting you and getting rid of you.
Yeah.
And he seems to have taken that on board. He seems to be a lot more, as you say, professional and, talking the right way about things.
I think, as Labarsky says as well, I mean, that, the speed that he was doing to be over that much and to have walked away with relatively nothing as well. I mean, that should be a wake-up call for anybody.
Yeah.
That, so he's obviously, he's gone away. He's taken this off season, and I think he's ready to perform this year. So and I mean, as we say, the work that's going to get done by this defensive tackle group as well should just basically bring everything to the outside for the defensive ends as well. So there'll be plenty of opportunities for Sam Williams this year as well, provided he's on the field, the opportunities will be there to shine. And I could quite easily see a 10-sack season from him, you know, multiple sacks from Dorrance Armstrong, what have you as well. This defensive has only got stronger in both the turnovers side of things, but also the sacks. The sack totals have been going up the last couple of years as well. So
and for anyone who is coming out to Dallas with us for the Thanksgiving game, there is a very strong possibility that Sam Williams will be in attendance on the day before the game. I'm not guaranteeing that, but we know Barry has a very good relationship with Sam, so and Sam did shout us out a couple of times for visiting, so we'd hope to see him whilst we're out there. Lebarski is just saying here, I think he's got a good head on his shoulders. These guys are still kids, and hopefully it was a wake up and he dedicates in the right way, and I think he has. And so say all of us for that on Sam Williams. At 3 technique, I think it's very easy to say our best player at 3 technique, and probably our best player at possibly in the last 10 years at 3 technique has been also Diggy Zua, who's going into his 3rd season. You know, he has been consistent. He has grown year on year. Obviously, he came in the class with Mike in 2021. His numbers have gone, as you say, up and to the right. And hopefully again in 2023, we'll see that improving.
Yeah, and I think, you know, he has the benefit as well. He's a younger brother. His brother was obviously with the New York Football Giants as well, and flamed out after 3 years. So he came into this league knowing that there is no gimmies. No matter where you get drafted, you've got to actually work for absolutely everything. And I think you've seen that from day one again, and that's why he has been this star. In ascendance for us, and again, all being well, you know, and he has a healthy year. I think, you know, the sky's the limit for him as well. You know, again, he should be kept relatively clean by being opposite Hankins or Mazzy Smith or whoever, you know, and it should allow him to be taking on the single team blocks. Again, from a guard or whatever, and getting in the backfield and snuffing anything out. So,
and that is one of the things with Osa. Obviously, I think he was a former wrestler as well. Is that his technique is very good. He has a lot of maneuvers. He's not relying on just one maneuver to get him into that backfield and make an impact. He has a range. He has strength to do it.
Yeah, and I again, we were talking about Bohanna being high pad level and everything.
Yeah.
If you're a wrestler, and I don't mean the Hulk Hogan type wrestling, I mean the high school wrestling that you're seeing, it is get down low, get below the guy, and that allows you to get the position, the strength, and you know, this is where he has the abilities to take on just about everything that he's seeing against, and he's able to take on guys that are outweighing him by 20, 30 pounds and brush them off as well. So, you know, that leverage that he has just plays into his arsenal as well. So, and you see as well that, you know, he has backup plans. So. You know, a lot of the people I follow on Twitter and Instagram as well, the coaching side of things, you know, they always say, don't go in saying, right, I'm going to do a swim move. You know, you've got to be ready for somebody countering that and say, right, okay, you got me with that. You know, I'll club you and move out the way or whatever.
Yeah.
And just, you know, have multiple options that you can react to almost immediately and say, right, okay, that's blocked. Go with this or whatever. So, and you're seeing that with him, and that's why there's so much potential with him.
Yeah, and I think that's what we've seen. As I say, like he tailed off in his first flagged a little bit at the end of the season. He's now into that third year. He should now be fully ready for a full season, has all the maneuvers. As Lebarski is saying here, he's a well-rounded player and he thinks he's ready to break out. And as you say, if you watch anyone on Twitter, if you watch any of the Instagram or TikToks or whatever your social media of choice is, they talk about Mazzy Smith, also Odigizua, as potentially the best defensive tackle from that class in 2021.
Yeah.
In terms of the impact he's made in this league.
Yeah, I mean, if you go back, I mean, that initial season that he had as well, obviously, we were all expecting big things out of one of the next people that we'll be talking about, Neville Gallimore. Gallimore went down in training camp with the ruptured bicep or whatever. Yeah. And that basically called on both Kendrick Golston and also Odigizua to step into the starting lineup almost immediately. Yeah. So come week 10, week 11, which you always talk about for rookies, they're used to a 10-game season. They then get 2-3 weeks off to prepare for the bowl game. They get another 2 or 3 weeks to prepare for the All-Star games, and then they're into the combine. And then after the combine, you're trying to build yourself back up to play football again. Yeah. So yeah, it was understandable why he tailed off towards the end of the first season. Yeah. You saw he came on strong towards the end of last season as well, or the play was still there at the tail end of last season. Yeah, and again, he should be ready to hit the ground running this year as well. And obviously, you'd have to be blind to see that, even for a guy like him, if he rests on his laurels, as I say, there is so much competition in this room that, what 2-3 days where you say, oh, I'm only going to practice at 25% today or something like that. That's you on the next bus out of here with getting traded to I don't know, Green Bay or the Browns or something like that.
Yeah. So you've kind of alluded to the last guy, Neville Gallimore. He's entering a contract year. The Dallas Cowboys have not had much luck with taking defensive tackles out of that trash school from up north. Yeah. Like Charles Tapper, they took him in 2016. He had no luck. Seemed to constantly be injured, and eventually the Cowboys released him. I think it was just before the start of his fourth season. Didn't play since then. Gallimore seems to be trending down that same path, in that he's flashed in bits and pieces, but it's never all been put together. This is the final call for him, and this is a huge section of OTAs for him.
It is. I think, again, it's where we're talking about the ascendance of Osa Odigizua and Kendrick Golston. At the same time, that's put the pressure on him because you haven't, the fact that he was a healthy scratch last year in a number of games suggests that he's not ingratiated them with the coaching staff. By all accounts as well, he was on trading block last year as well. Yeah, they didn't manage to ship him off. There was the whole thing of him taking any mention of the Cowboys off his socials as well. So he was obviously ready for something happening at the trade deadline as well. It never materialized, but he should go in with a fresh opportunity this year, put the tape out there. Hopefully you beat somebody out. You make that hard decision. Very least, you make that hard decision for the front office and the coaching staff. And if it all goes to pot, chances are you get traded or you will be one of the first people that gets picked up from that position as well if you're released. And fresh start somewhere else, new coaching staff. You might get the chance to extend your stay in the league.
Yeah, like as you say, it seems to be a mental thing with Neville, that he just doesn't seem to have put it all together yet in terms of technique, in terms of, you know, the mental side of it. And it just seems to be a light bulb. And the thing is, he is going to get a lot of opportunities in these off-season games because, as you say, effectively, he's on that bubble. And these three preseason games will decide who makes the 53, who makes the practice squad if they can come back around, and who gets cut.
Yeah, I mean, to give you an idea as well, the fact that Neville Gallimore was playing in the third preseason game last year, which invariably was the game when most people you rest your starters, you don't play some of these guys. The fact that Neville Gallimore was playing in that third game and pretty much played, I think he played the whole of the second half as well. So
yeah,
you know, deep into the fourth quarter anyway. That shows that he wasn't in favour last year. You know, and as you say, I think it is mental, and whether it's, you know, we were predicting big things when he went down with that injury of the bicep. He then had 11 weeks off and didn't, you know, obviously was still finding his feet towards the end of that season, early elimination from playoffs. And then you think you're there, you go into last year's camp thinking, well, you know, I'm there or thereabouts, I'm ready, I made it, you know, and I'm safe. And then you've got these young whippersnappers that actually go, well, wait a minute, you're not there. You know, and he just wasn't getting on the field. Was he bitter about it in practice? Was there a bit of spitballing or anything like that with the coaches? So, you know, it's a level of self-entitlement as well. You don't know. We don't obviously know the ins and outs of what's going on. You could almost do with Hard Knocks, you know, the Cowboys being the Hard Knocks in season training, in season team that they pick, and just see how it happens on the day to day. But you know, there's obviously something there that the coaching staff weren't willing to say, we're dressing you to play this game. You know, so.
And I'm just going to pull up Levarsky's last point here because, again, it does have a certain amount of validity. He's saying, I think the flex of Junior Fehoko is actually his biggest competition. And considering the options we will have at defensive end, who we've brought in, I would tend to lean towards this, that Bohanna is on the bubble. Gallimore's in the departure lounge. And Fehoko, if you wanted to carry a seventh defensive end, Fehoko could slide in to defensive tackle in a pinch and do something for you.
Yeah, I mean, as I say, you've got Kendrick Golston as well.
Yeah.
So Kendrick Golston as well, he's the sort of Tyrone Crawford guy that they've developed, that, you know, he has that flex that he can go out to end, he can play in without actually having, where Tyrone Crawford was having to change his body type year in, year out.
Yeah.
Kendrick Golston has that sort of physique that, you know, it's interchangeable straight away without having to go and put 20 pounds on this year or lose 20 pounds. So there's that. Fehoko is, you know, it's a work in progress. It's what was he? It was a fourth round pick. So you know, it is a bit of a project, but you know, again, the guys are talking about position flex with him. And you know, if nothing else as well, you know, we talk about the NASCAR package where you talk about getting as many defensive ends on the field all at one time. That's when you bring somebody like Fehoko into the middle and use that pass rushing ability. And again, Fehoko, you've seen some good stuff. He's obviously, again, he's got pedigree where he's the cousin of Vita Vea as well. So that growing up they've gone and worked on things together, and albeit they're slightly different positions, but the skills need to be there as well, the pass rush moves, that sort of thing. So he should be able to come into this camp and light it up as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we've given everyone a pretty good flavor of the defensive tackles. Do you think, and again, I'm going to bring it back around to that question I asked at the start, do you think the Cowboys will go with 5 defensive tackles this year, or do you think they will go with 3 to 4 and, as you say, use Chauncey Goldston, use Junior Fehoko as those tweener flex guys that can drop down?
I think across the defensive line, and again, take Micah Parsons out of this. You could classify Micah Parsons as a linebacker as well. So potentially you could be talking about using 9 or 10 places for that defensive line. What your makeup is going to be what's causing major consternations for this defensive coaching staff and the front office, trying to decide, do you go long on defensive tackle? Do you go short on defensive tackle and go long on the defensive ends? And it just this is what they're going to be arguing about for most of training camp, and it's up to these guys whether you're number 1 on the depth chart or you're right down at the bottom of the depth chart. You've got to hit this training camp running, and there is no rest for you. Again, as I say, the only one who's guaranteed is Mazi Smith. So for the defensive tackles, he's the only one that's on guaranteed salary. Anybody else you could potentially part ways with if things come about. And, as I say, this coaching staff's very good at putting people onto IR when they need to.
Very true.
Or put them on PUP or something like that and activate them later on as well. So I'm certainly not saying there's a bit of a Bill Belichick about it, but everybody's capable of doing something where you sneak things under the radar.
Yeah. I'd be fully expecting when the 53-man roster is named, and we will be doing a 53-man roster prediction on UK Cowboys. Myself and Rich and Graham and Lauren might even jump in with us on this one. We'll be doing and predict the 53. And I think if we've learned nothing from the last 2 years, the Cowboys won't have a 53-man roster with a kicker, a punter, or a long snapper on it.
Yeah.
So they have gotten creative. They know how to get creative to get players onto the roster. So touch wood, as you say, like it's the thing about getting a guy onto the roster and then putting them on PUP, putting them on IR, and using it cleverly, as you say.
Yep.
But that is the end of tonight's show. We will be back next Thursday. We will resume normal programming and be back at 9 o'clock here in the UK and Ireland. 3 o'clock Texas time, 4 o'clock on the East Coast of the US.
Sounds about right. Yep.
And Lebarski is giving a shout out. He says, make sure Graham is chaperoned. Yes, absolutely, Lebarski. We will make sure he's well chaperoned. Rich and Graham have already been trying to get me to make trades for a left guard. But before we get out of here, Lauren, we'll do the usual the shout outs. Yep. So I'll bring it up there.
Okay, so out with obviously our Thanksgiving package. If you are thinking about going to a game this year, make sure you book with Cowboys Experience for the ultimate meet and greets, stadium tours, game tickets, and tailgating, much more. Obviously, you get to meet players like Sam Williams, as we've talked about, Micah Parsons, Drew Pearson, Randy White, Ed Too Tall Jones, Jay Novacek there, Travis Frederick when he's in town as well. And these guys will treat you like royalty. And of course, if you mention that UK Cowboys sent you as well, you'll get some free stuff. And it might include some chocolate pudding.
Good man. That is absolutely true. And of course, our fellow content creators, we always love to give a shout out to those guys as well. So all of the guys over at the Dallas Cowboys media team were talking Cowboys, hanging with the Cowboys, the break, 105.3 The Fan, the draft show. So make sure you're tuned in to all of those guys. And then our fellow content creators, guys like Jay Tuck, Big Game James, Skywalker Steele, Vach Lombardi, KT's Fun Tweets. Get following those guys on Twitter, on Facebook, on every social media channel you can get. They will give you so much insight into the game of football. And of course, the big one, Lauren.
Yeah, so as I alluded to earlier as well, we're hitting Dallas for the big game at Thanksgiving. We've got people coming from all over the place now. So we've got people coming down from Canada. We've got people coming from Germany. Obviously, Mike and Paul were on with the guys from Big D Germany as well. So, get on our Facebook group. The details are there. Contact Barry at Cowboys Experience and get yourself the deposit paid and decide which package you're going on. And you'll get to meet us as well. And we've got the meet and greets as well. So
yeah, absolutely. We are trying to get a bit more details. So please do stay tuned to our Facebook, to our Twitter, to our Instagram. And we'll try and share a bit more details over the next month with you in terms of, say, numbers going, where people are staying, kind of some informal events that are happening. That Barry has, we've seen most of Barry's plans, and they're pretty good. But obviously there'll be informal get-togethers because people will be coming in from, I'm guessing some people will come in from the weekend before. They'll be there from Monday. I think most of us are flying in Tuesday, Lauren. So, there'll be informal get-togethers to meet up, to chat to fellow Cowboys. So, the best way to do that is to be in the Facebook group, finding out what's going on, and we will keep you as informed as we can.
Yep.
Absolutely. So, again, as I say, next week, usual programming will resume. Mike will be back in the chair. Lauren, I'm sure you'll be on next Thursday evening with Liz being away.
Yeah, I will be, and then I'm going to be off the next couple of weeks after that with jury duty and my own week of holiday as well. So
yeah. So make sure you tuned in, folks, and I will pass it off to Lauren as I say good night.
Yeah, so have a great week, guys. I'll catch you next week, and go Cowboys. Cowboys forever, Philly for never.